Hello and welcome to In Business. I'll look at the world of business, industry and commerce in and around the Liverpool City region. I'm Lynn Boyd.
And I'm Jackie Lee.
For businesses to thrive in today's economy, they need to have put the right investment into finding the right people, and then when they've found them, retaining them.
And this is especially the case for small businesses. The cost of finding a new employee, including advertising, interviewing and screening, is really expensive.
So then there's the point of training and the time spent with the new recruit whilst becoming familiar with the organisation. The costs soon add up.
So it's in the interest of businesses to get it right when hiring.
So over the next few programmes, we'll be looking at people management. But today we have with us Stephen Davis, solicitor at Three Graces Legal, who is going to discuss the fundamentals of contracts and the risks involved if we get it wrong.
Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Jackie.
For coming along
Thanks
today.
for having me. Appreciate it.
We're going to start at the beginning, really, and what I'd like to ask you is your opinion on when small businesses in particular are recruiting a new employee, what should be their thoughts around what needs to go into that recruitment process?
I think one of the first considerations an employer needs to have is whether they need to take on an employee in the first place. I mean, obviously, when you take on an employee, you are taking on a liability to a degree. You're obviously liable to pay wages. Obviously, if they're there for a period of 2 years or more, they're entitled to redundancy. They're also entitled to holiday pay. And a payment of accrued but untaken holiday pay when they leave, and of course notice pay. So it is quite a large financial commitment, and some businesses need to look at their budget and may consider that it might be more appropriate to take on a subcontractor, maybe.
And that's more kind of like an associate that you'd work with,
that would be
rather
more like,
than
more
the
like an
employment
associate.
side of things.
And the advantage of that would be obviously the degree of flexibility, because when you're looking at an employee, you are looking at taking somebody on for the long term, and like I say, there is that financial commitment there. Whereas a subcontractor allows more flexibility, whereby you're not obviously committed to having that person there necessarily for the long term.
Okay. So if we've decided then that we're going to go down the recruitment road, so we've had a look at budget, we've agreed we can do it, and we're going to recruit, what are the fundamentals that we need to be thinking about then?
Okay, I think obviously as an employment law solicitor, some of the important legal considerations probably revolve around the Equality Act 2010. You have to be very, very careful in a recruitment process that you don't discriminate against somebody. It's illegal to discriminate against somebody on the ground of a protected characteristic, for example, age, disability, sex, race, and that sort of thing. So, for example, when you're considering an applicant who might be disabled, you need to consider your duty under the Equality Act to consider reasonable adjustments. So, for example, you might look at things like wheelchair ramps. You might have to consider such things as the ability to work from home, maybe longer breaks and that sort of thing, anything you can to accommodate that person. And like I say, the duty is enshrined in the Equality Act 2010 to make reasonable adjustments. Looking at, again, from an age point of view, if you're putting an advert out there, you have to make sure that you don't discriminate against somebody because of their age. So, for example, I would probably avoid using age-related terminology or age ranges. And, you know, in any sort of advert, I wouldn't sort of ask for a dynamic young graduate or say we're looking for a dynamic young graduate, because that could fall foul of the legislation.
So would it be right in thinking then that something as important as that, it would be good to get some kind of advice before you actually...
Some sort of legal advice, first of all. Like I said, another example could be sex discrimination. For example, if when you're advertising, you say that we only want full-time workers, that could be indirect sex discrimination against women, because women are more likely, even today, to have more sort of childcare responsibilities, and so would be more suitable to a sort of part-time role. So I think getting legal advice, you know, if you've got a human resources department, great. If you're a smaller company and you don't, I think it's well worth probably having, you know, maybe a solicitor that you can contact as you're going through the recruitment process. But one of the things to bear in mind in a recruitment, like I say, from an employment law point of view, is to make sure that you don't discriminate against people.
Okay. Yeah. And an interview's fine then, isn't it? You don't need to go through a whole recruitment process, as long as you have the basics in place and you can show that you've been fair in your selection. Just going through an interview process is fine.
Absolutely, yep. An interview process and then a short list, and that's absolutely fine, yeah.
I suppose it depends on the employer the type of job, what your process would actually be, whether you would just require interviews, whether you would want case studies or role play type of interventions.
And then, of course, taking up references and things like that are important as well. So medical assessments, and then obviously the ultimate choice, who is right for your organisation.
Okay. So we've got the person who's right for our organisation now. So we want to move on a little bit.
Yeah. What I'd like to look at now then is we've got them, they're there, right. What I'd like to look at is contract of employment.
Okay, yeah.
So we'd like your advice on that, really, of what it should look like and why it's important.
Yeah. Well, from day one, a lot of people don't realise there always is a contract of employment, whether it's written or not. A lot of people think that there has to be a written contract of employment in place. That's good because it provides certainty, but there are lots of different things that comprise an employment contract. For example, any verbal promises made at the outset, for example, in a telephone conversation or at an interview, that could form part of the contract of employment.
And could that even happen before an interview?
That could even happen before an interview, absolutely, yeah. If you've had a chat with somebody, that could potentially arguably become part of the employment contract. Also, the offer letter. Think what you put in the offer letter. Normally that contains things like your start date, your end date, what your salary will be, what your hourly rate will be. All these can form part of the contract.
Working hours and things like that.
That sort of thing, absolutely, yep. We've got the staff handbook. The staff handbook's important. That contains all manner of policies and procedures, which again can form part of the contract of employment.
Just a quick question on that then. If we're a new business and we're setting up policy and procedure, does all that have to be in place before we look at recruiting?
I would say it'd be better to have it in place because one of the most important things in employment law is to prevent things from going wrong. So if it's already down and if it's already set in policies and procedure, then obviously you're negating the possibility of having claims against you.
And of course it means that both parties are aware of what's going to happen and what's expected.
And what's expected and what the position is, because of course there are other sorts of terms, less obvious, such as implied terms. So these can be implied by statute. For example, the employee, also the employer has a duty to provide the employee with work. The employee has a duty to undertake that work. There's the implied term of trust and confidence contained within an employment contract. And often when this is breached, for example, when an employee is being bullied and harassed, there are potential claims for constructive dismissal and things like that. What else have we got in the employment contract? Collective agreements for the bigger employers that recognise trade unions.
Okay, brilliant. So different types of contracts then. I know there's quite a bit around the normal standard contract.
Yep.
Then we've got a fixed term contract,
That's
which
right.
gives it away in the title.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about 0 hours contracts.
Yeah, the most common one is obviously the open-ended contract, which you mentioned there, which is what most people are employed on. So it's for an indefinite term, and it only comes to an end, obviously, when that person leaves. There's the fixed-term contract, which you refer to then. There's the very politically sensitive contract at the moment, which is obviously the 0 hours contract. Now, this is where the employer or the employee is under no obligation, or the employer is under no obligation to provide work, and the employee is only paid for the amount of hours that he's worked. Now, from an employer's point of view, this is obviously has major advantages in that there's a degree of flexibility there, in that they have a pool of selection of people on standby, if you like, ready to sort of step in when the employer needs them. But of course, it is a politically sensitive area, and from an employee's point of view, although on the face of it, that there appears to be parity, because an employee is not required to turn up for work either if he doesn't want to. The difficulty is, I suppose, if that employee turns down the work on one occasion, will he be offered the work again? So that's probably...
So can you have more than one 0 hours contract as an employee then?
You would normally be employed just on the 1 0 hours contract.
Well, can you do it with different companies?
I'm not sure actually.
To check the position on that.
We'll have to have a look whether they can be employed on more than one.
Okay.
I mean, because there is that argument, as you said, sometimes the actual employee themselves actually welcome a 0 hours.
Absolutely. For example, students, seasonal workers, it works absolutely ideal for them, and they do actually want the opportunity to work under 0 hours contracts. Probably if you've got a family, mortgage commitments and that sort of thing, then probably for the employee, from their point of view, it's not as suitable.
And also I'm thinking as well from the employer-employee relationship, it's best to have a set contract with a set number of hours because then you've got the commitment and you can start building on that relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, it provides certainty. If you've got something written down, it provides certainty. Which is always good. I would suggest that you do. Indeed, you've got a duty under Section 1 of the Employment Rights Act to issue your employers with a statement of terms and conditions from day one, within the first 2 months. Right. There's no reason why you can't do that from day one. And if you fail to do that, claimants can make a claim for between 2 and 4 weeks' pay. So the statement of terms and conditions is like a contract of employment. It isn't a contract of employment, but it's good evidence that a contract of employment exists.
Okay. So it's a big, big subject then, isn't it? And there's lots in there.
Okay,
if I want more information, I can come to you?
Yep, we're a firm of solicitors, Three Graces Legal. We're based at the Cotton Exchange in Liverpool, and we'll be more than happy to take on inquiries.
Fabulous.
Okay, well, thanks, Steve. That was really informative. Well, that's all we have time for in part one, but don't go away because we'll be back after the break. Hello and welcome back. Now, apprenticeship programmes have been around for many years in different formats. Today, they're a massive opportunity for individuals joining the workforce and also for the businesses who offer them.
An apprentice can gain valuable experience, build competencies, become skilled in a certain field and set themselves up for the future.
To understand more about apprenticeship schemes and how they work, we welcome Sarah Collinge and Joanne Reimer, Business Development Manager from Greater Merseyside Learning Providers Federation.
Good morning.
So welcome to you both. Thanks so much for coming along. So first of all, standard question, over to Jo, what is an apprenticeship?
Well, you'll have heard an awful lot about apprenticeships and the government saying they want 3 million apprentices by 2020. An apprenticeship is a programme that young people, one time 16 to 18, could embark on an employed programme in different areas of expertise within their chosen field. The apprenticeship lasts a year, 365 days, or it can last as long as the occupational area apprenticeship requires. So you have intermediate level, level 3, level 4, level 5, 6, and we're also now going to degree level apprenticeship. Okay. So an apprenticeship is basically a training programme, an educational programme that is work-based for a young person in the world of work.
And when you said before, Jo, 16 to 18-year-olds, is that a wider offer now?
It is wider offer now. Obviously, we have 1924 plus. We have higher level apprenticeships now, and we also have degree level apprenticeships. So yes, there is very soon there'll be no sort of ceiling at all on apprenticeships because the government are seeing them as the way forward in building up the workforce that we feel that we need.
Okay, thanks, Jo. Sarah, as the training director for Andrew Collinge Hairdressing, yes. I know you've got an apprenticeship scheme and it's a very famous scheme and it's been going for many years. Would you like to tell me a bit about the Andrew Collinge apprenticeship scheme?
Well, apprenticeships have always been the traditional way that you become a hairdresser. That is the classic route. And in our company, we've always put great store by good quality training. And we have our own salons, which we have our own apprentices. And we also train for about 120 employers in the Merseyside area. So on our programme at the moment, we've got about 150 intermediate apprentices and the rest are doing their advanced apprenticeship at level 3. So they're all employed in a salon and then come to one of our training salons, either in Liverpool or on the Wirral, for day release for their course.
Okay, so just to put that into context then, so they're an employee of the organisation from day one.
Yes.
Apprenticeships are employed. Yeah.
Fabulous,
Yeah.
thanks Jo. So they're employed, they move into the organisation, and then from day one they gain the experience on the job.
Yes.
And they also come out to gain valuable additional training through such as a scheme as yours.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes, there's a very clear career progression.
Yes.
They can see, you know, from day one. Obviously, on our scheme, a lot of them are 16 to 18. So really, you know, no confidence and when they start. And it's wonderful to see them progress, maybe 18 months on their intermediate and then another year. And then to see them go on as a salon stylist and then maybe a manager or go into teaching. Obviously not just with Andrew College, but our other employers as well. A lot of our apprentices, past apprentices, now own their own salons and are now employing apprentices, so they're following on.
Yeah, they see the benefit.
They see the benefit.
Yeah, that's often things that the people do not see. The young people that do go through an apprenticeship programme, yes, they have quite bespoke training with the chosen path, but it's the confidence they gain and what they sort of develop in an environment. This is a workplace environment. And they go on to better and bigger things. And sometimes within the company, they stay within the company and they will grow within the company. And the company then appreciate the fact that they've got a young person, that they're growing their own future, their own, exactly, the organic growth. They've got the young people there, and then they can see and they develop and they move them in the company and they get extra training within. Could be a different division path, it could be a different part of the country in some cases. We've had young especially engineering apprentices who've actually done so well that they've said, would you like, and they go mechanical engineering, and they move within the company and develop. Employers do say that apprenticeships who have apprenticeships have 15% more opportunity of getting employed.
And lots of organisations do take advantage of that, don't they? Especially the larger organisations.
Larger organisations, which is why the government are now talking about looking at larger organisations to promote this 3 million target.
Yeah. What I want to ask, because it's going to be the dreaded question, I know, and everyone's thinking about it, funding. Yeah. So from a financial point of view, how does the funding side of things work for taking on an apprentice?
Well, you start from the employer side and I'll start from the provider side.
Okay, so from the employer side.
Because the employers will want to know how it works
Yes.
hands-on.
So as an employer, if you take on an apprentice, you then find a training provider, normally an independent training provider, but there is some provision within colleges of further education as well. And normally you're employing the apprentice on the apprentice rate or more if you want to pay that. And they would normally then go to the training provider on a day release basis. And at the moment, there is no cost to the employer. In fact, there are incentives for them to take on an apprentice at the moment. This may all change when we get onto the levy.
Well, let's just move over to the operational side for a second. So
now,
from
the operational
provider,
side is what Sarah's just said. The provider of the choice of the employer will work with the employer to look at how they want that apprentice to look like, what they want involved in their apprenticeship.
Okay.
So it's very much geared to the employer requirements, but also the individual, where they start.
Right.
Obviously, you can't just assume where they start and where they want to be. So it's a very bespoke programme.
Okay.
So,
and how does the funding work then?
The funding goes the employer comes to the training provider.
Yeah.
The training provider then trains, and they get from the SFA. They get the money from the SFA, and then it's no charge whatsoever.
FSA is
Skills Funding Agency.
fabulous.
Sorry, I'm using.
This
That's
could
okay.
all change.
But this could all change.
Let's now talk
This-
about the levy.
Yes, this could all change.
Okay.
As we've just been mentioning, the government's targets for 3 million. What they are looking at doing and what they have started the process of over the last year is a apprenticeship levy. The apprenticeship levy will be for companies of large companies who have a salary bill or a wage bill above 3 million.
Right, okay.
And they will get that money directly through their HMRC situation within their payroll, within their company. The issue is that the levy has to be spent on apprenticeship training.
Okay, right.
So if you imagine, nationally we have 22,700, I think, that are automatically going to be ready for levy. In the Liverpool City region, we have 452.
Right, okay.
Which is a lot. It is quite a lot. And providers that have been working previously with the SFA will now work directly with employers.
Right.
The employer will work directly with the provider and say, this is what we want.
So
that's
it'll be
a
more
good-
bespoke.
Yeah,
It is more bespoke, and I agree, Lynn, it's a stronger way forward, because employers have always said in the past, and you'll have heard them say it because you're both with what you do for your magazine, they sometimes say these young people aren't ready. Right. What the government is saying, okay, you said you wanted this, you don't think they're ready.
Yeah. Make sure that they
you
are.
make sure that they are, and if that's what you want to do, and you want to design, and they have done, there's something called the Trailblazer, which is in process. They're designing new ways of delivering apprenticeships. And some of them are very qualifications based, and others aren't, the standards based.
So as Jackie says, they're more tailored.
They are
So
far more tailored, and there's far more employer
Yes,
emphasis and presence.
the employer
Right.
is driving what the qualification will look like.
Okay, this is a fascinating subject, and I know we could go on forever, especially from our point of view, because we've got hundreds of questions.
Yeah. But that's all we have time for in this edition of Business in Business. Please feel free to email us with any issue you'd like us to discuss on In Business or info@btvliverpool.com.
Or you can keep in touch via Twitter or Facebook. In the meantime, though, from our guests today, so we have Sarah and Joe and Steve earlier on, from myself and from Jackie, goodbye, and we'll see you soon.